We have a great show. We have Amanda coming back. Woo! Fan requested. And we look forward to having her when she comes on. We have also a great live. We're going to do something new today. We never really did this before. But what this is essentially is we're going to do, it's like something kind of similar to what you do on YouTube, like feedback. So what we're gonna do is watch a video for 10 minutes about a special guest that we have, and I'll let Seth introduce him a little bit more later. But he's gonna be a special guest that's gonna be exclusive to us, which I think is pretty cool. Seeing that we're just a new podcast and we're already getting these kind of big guests on, and this is gonna be our first kind of all our guests are special. Clearly, this is gonna be our I think our first guest who's actually running office. So this is going to be pretty cool. We're going to be able to chime and get into policy issues that us progressive really care about. So with that being said, I want to say that we have a great show. It's going to be very impactful. You guys are going to learn a lot. We're going to talk about current events like we always do and show and connected to our policy positions. And we're going to have a good time tonight. This is going to be a show. I already have an adult beverage.
Here we go.
Exactly.
Wait, what are you drinking?
I am drinking.
I'm a bartender, so.
Actually, it's funny I would say that, and maybe you guys will enjoy this. I'm drinking a Cuba Libre. And Cuba Libre is very Cuban.
I was going to say, I don't know what that is.
Okay, my wife just said no shit. And she's in the camera shop. No, Cuba Libre is like a drink that you take essentially rum and you mix it with Coke. And you kind of mix it together, and it's Cuba Libre.
I should have known. Jesse always ordered rum and Coke whenever we had events.
That is the island blood. That like this is the rum. I don't know what it is.
I'm more of a whiskey ginger guy, so.
I did ginger one time. It wasn't that bad. It was actually
really
pretty decent. Yeah, ginger's pretty decent. Jeannie hated it. I think she threw up that way. Yeah.
It depends on if you use ginger ale or ginger beer, and it depends on what kind of whiskey you use.
It does. It does matter. Whiskey is such a very heavy tasting alcohol.
True.
So like you can't really mask the taste. And like me, I'm a very social drinker, so I tend to like drinks that not so heavy on the alcohol, but kind of mask the taste of it through like soda or juice or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would do the same if it was like gin or vodka. I hate the taste of that, but I like a little taste of tequila. I like a taste of whiskey. So if I have a little bit stronger on those drinks, then I'm good.
Yeah, vodka makes your hair stands up a little bit. Maybe makes my hair stand up. It's like Russian has like true blood. Russians, they have true blood. The blood of the North, I tell you.
Vodka tastes like strong like that, but then gin is just disgusting. There's no redeeming qualities.
You don't like gin?
I hate gin.
Man, I thought gin was not bad. I mean, I am 1% British. And I was like trying this gin, right? Because I guess I was being stupid. I was trying to like I'm British. Let me try gin.
I'm British.
So we and Jenny bought some gin, and then we were drinking it, and it was like, oh no, gin is the one she threw up on. Gin is the one that I actually was able to drink. It is such a weird taste, though. It was weird compared to most alcohol out there. It has a very unique taste.
It's definitely like the most distinct taste compared to the other alcohols. All right, to transition real quick, Amanda popped on, so we're gonna have Amanda on right now. You ready, Amanda? All right, here we go. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're just talking about our different beverage of choice. Beverages.
Yeah, I heard you say you were going to send me some Macallan. Thank you.
No, we try to. Yeah, I got to do that. I'll do that.
Here, I'll send you my deets right now. Hold on.
Macallan 18, right?
Whatever's on the high shelf up there, behind the glass case.
Wow.
We sell that at my bar, and I had one guy come in one time. He ordered like 5 different shots of Macallan 18, and they're $44 a shot. So
yeah,
that was a good day for me.
Is it?
Yes.
Is it like really good liquor? I've never had Macallan.
It's 18 years old, and it's like pretty high end. Yeah,
that's good.
I obviously haven't even tried it, but
I'm such a novice when it comes to alcohol. I'm very basic.
That's
like
okay.
Steph seen me order drinks all the time when we went out. Steph seen it's like
7, yeah.
It's like rum and coke.
Yeah.
I don't deviate, and it's like, but now I want to try to increase my palate a little bit. I don't want to be,
Now he's having rum and coke, but Cuban.
It's a Cuba Libre. Look at the name. I had to do it based on the cup.
You gotta do it.
Yeah. So the guys, and just one disclaimer: this is an adult show. Obviously,
we're not gonna be like live streaming Paw Patrol or what?
No,
that was the video we're gonna watch.
We're very, how can I say, unhinged in our vocabulary and our ability to, take
freedom of expression.
Yes.
Yeah. I want
I
you
like
to know.
Beer. What's Captain Bliss? I like beer.
Okay.
I only drink the Golden State cider because I'm a wuss. It needs to taste like fruit.
Mojito. There we go.
Yeah.
Mojito. That's it. Okay. Amanda knows her alcohol. Okay.
Well, I've never been one to drink to excess because probably I worked when I was in college. I worked in a rehab center. I did the overnight drunk tank.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, never doing that.
Yeah, it gets less fun the more you, in my opinion.
I never had more than I should have until I was 32. We had an archaeology conference in Vancouver. So all my I'm like, I've never done that. They're like, oh, we're going to do that to you. I'm like, no, you're not. So they decided, okay, last night there, let's do scotch. I'm like, I'm in. And we got Macallan. It was Macallan. And they're all like, they took a sip. They're like, oh, I can't do this. Here, you drink it. Yeah, they were really smart. They got me. They got me. And I had a 6 a.m. flight the next morning, but I made it.
Oh, wow.
Now you can always order drinks on the flight. You know what I mean?
True queen.
When I was flying back from Michigan the other day, I definitely took advantage of that. I was like, I'm not going to be able to sleep on this rocky plane. Like, I'm just going to order a little drink, relax, take a little edge off. It can be pretty handy in
what flight did you take back from Michigan?
What was that?
What flight you took back from Michigan?
What flight? Like what airline?
Yeah.
I took both Delta and Frontier.
I like Frontier, man.
You're a better man than me.
I mean, I had my flight got canceled the day of.
Oh gosh.
And, I was really screwed.
Yeah.
It's refunded me. I had to get a ticket that was 3 times as expensive. So that blowed. But.
Well, on Frontier, that's $15. So
no,
the Frontier wasn't the canceled one, I guess.
Yeah.
Is Frontier like Spirit? Is it very similar?
Yeah, it's bare bones. Bring your own pilot. But if you need to get somewhere, if you need to get somewhere on time, you want Frontier because they fly like bats out of hell, and they will get you. They're like, okay, we're down.
Oh,
we're here.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, last time I was on Spirit, I was in Chicago flying back to Tampa, and an hour, no, maybe it was half hour in. I was in a middle seat in the front, and it was literally the least leg room of any seat because right in front of it was first class, and I was in the middle seat, and I was having, I think I was recovering from COVID still, and I was having a panic attack, and then I noticed I almost said the nurse, the flight attendant, she was she kept talking on the phone in the front of the airplane, and I'm like, my intuition was bling bling bling, red flag, and then soon enough, 5 minutes later, she's like, well, we're going to have to redirect this flight back to Chicago Airport. We're some connections or some flight controls are not working or something like that. I'm like, oh, I'm going to die.
Things I don't need to know. Thank you.
Yeah, something was not working or connecting. And I'm like, well, this is
pilot.
This is
Oh, God. You should have brought your own.
Both pilots have been incapacitated. Does anyone know how to fly an airplane? No.
Well, it's funny because Jenny, She was showing me a TikTok yesterday where the guy was on Spirit, and then the flight attendant's like, "Is anybody here as a nurse or a doctor?"
Oh no.
And the passengers were like, "This is Spirit. We don't fly. Nurses and doctors are not in this plane."
That's a good point. Although Jenny is she's why did I think Jenny's a nurse? I don't know.
No, she's a lawyer.
Yeah, what am I saying?
Nurse lawyer.
Yeah, it's all the same.
Yeah, it's right the same. Oh man. And thanks for telling me that stuff. I got a Spirit flight to Las Vegas. Now I'm gonna be paranoid, asking myself, like, man, hopefully flight controls don't freaking jack up.
It should be fine.
I got your back. My bestie's a pilot. You just call him, okay? Bring him with you.
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, just throw a pilot in your carry-on. You're good to go.
A parrot's
what's
that's the one freaking you can see on the plane. It's the pilot.
Yeah, as long as you can fit underneath your passenger seats, like
you're good to go.
Yeah.
Good to go.
Yeah, I actually totally snuck on my bag on my very last flight. Like they had the little box you're supposed to fit your bag in to see if it counts as a carry-on, and everybody in line was doing it. And right as I put it in, like all the other flight attendants looked away, and I was just stuck in. I'm like, well, that doesn't fit. And I pulled it out, and I just walked forward, and I'm like pretended like it did fit, because I was not about to spend another like $80. Or have to, like,
I can see stuff like literally slamming the thing.
Well, I did it very, very subtly because I had that intuition, that I'm like, this is not gonna fit. But nobody noticed, and I got on, and we made it back alive, and I made that money back, so we're all good. They didn't it fit underneath the seat, so I don't know what that box was for, because that was to measure whether or not it would fit underneath the seats, and my bag fit underneath the seats, so they need to fix that box.
That's right. That's what this is that you need to call the show that they need to fix the box.
Yeah,
and that's what we're going to do, gentlemen. We're going to fix this box of a country.
My bag fit just fine. You guys' box is defective. You need to work on it.
I used to date this guy from India, and when you're going to India or coming from India, you have, I think it's like law, you have to get the biggest possible suitcase.
Oh man.
And you have to put like, I've never seen anyone pack like this. Like,
yeah.
Like, why don't you just? It would be cheaper just to pick up the Walmart and bring it with. Oh my gosh! But you take gifts back for your, for your family and friends, like everybody.
Yeah.
Why do you need that many M&Ms? What's going on here?
My
you heard about Indian M&Ms?
No? No, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, my tia-in-law is Indian. Indian, excuse me. Wow. She heard me say that. My tia-in-law is Cuban.
God, there's a difference there, Justin.
Yeah, very different.
She might have a little Indian. I mean, you're 1% British, right?
Yeah, I was surprised. I was both that way, but very surprised. But no, she's Cuban, and every time she goes to Cuba, it's a big deal because she packs and packs and packs. And one time she came, she packed like 4 or 5 bags, and the bags were heavier than me. And I'm a big guy.
Yeah.
And they were heavier than me. And by the time I was done helping her pack the car, I was just like sweaty and tired and exhausted. and so she's like, every time she says she's going to Cuba, I'm like, I gotta go.
I just got a call into the emergency room. I'm needed in. I have to be in operation. Whatever.
Emergency lawyer stuff.
I got a lawyerish stuff. Yeah.
It's a situation.
I got this lawyer problem. I got to be in the surgery room.
Do you why don't you do they still make pagers? Anytime that happens, you call us. We will page you. Oh, I gotta go.
Yeah, I gotta go. Sorry.
You heard the beep.
No, she laughs because she knows.
Yeah.
She knows. She's like, Cuba is just, that's her way of telling me, like, yeah, you're about to work.
Yeah. How does and she's going without you. How does she how does she get it through the airport?
She gets everything because they're all going obviously under the plane, and so she has a neighbor who drives her like at 5:30 in the morning, and he helps her.
He is a hero.
He is a hero. He is a true champion. Has the best radio voice of ever. But he's a true champion. But yeah, so he helps her. But in terms of packing it and getting in the car, that's usually me and Ginny's job.
Yeah.
Well, that's Ginny assigns that job to me, so I do that job.
I'm the opposite. I no one bag. I'll throw some stuff. I mean, I don't need a bunch of hair crap anymore. But even before it fell out, I wouldn't take it with. I would just like get it when I got there, like in little bottles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope. Went to Spain for a week. Brought a backpack. That's it.
That's always perfect.
How much do you really need to travel with you? Like a change of undies and like maybe a couple pairs of clothes, and you're good, bro.
Yeah.
You can get anywhere.
It's not your outfits. All right. So this show, like I said earlier, had the amazing Amanda, which she already joined.
Thank you.
We already established that.
Yes, I am amazing.
And we also have a video that Steph's going to give of our special guest that's coming on next week.
Yeah.
And
our very next episode is next week, Thursday.
Yes.
It will be, July 20th. We will be I won't say debating, but we're having a conversation with our good friend Mike Termott. He is Libertarian presidential candidate. He's affiliated with the Mises Caucus. He's I don't know if he identifies as an anarcho-capitalist, but he's definitely very libertarian, and he's been making his rounds on all the talk shows recently. A lot of shows way bigger than us. So this is a segment from Kyle Kalinski's show, which has 1 million subscribers, so a lot bigger than us, and they had him on the show. So we're going to react to that.
Yeah, so we're going to play, how long stuff? Is it 5 or 10 minutes?
The video posted I'm about to click on is 14 minutes, but we don't have to watch the whole thing.
Yeah,
we can just watch it.
Yeah, find a good point.
Because we feel like,
All right, cool.
And we're going to act live time. All right, is it show? You guys see my screen?
I see 3 of us, and I see a black screen.
Oh, there we go. You don't see my screen?
There you go.
I see it now.
I do now.
Libertarian presidential candidate.
That's it.
There it is.
I'm gonna press. That's our man.
Said that you want to get government out of corporate America. There are parts of it I agree with, but to me that seems like the total opposite direction to go in. And I'm not for regulation's sake, but I think with this whole submersible down to the Titanic situation, you had a pretty clear example of where you could have really used some additional regulation requiring the submersible to meet basic standards of safety, and you very well would not have lost the lives on board. And this doesn't seem like a problem that the free market would just fix with perfect information. Granted, now I think there are going to be a lot fewer people going on submersibles onto the Titanic, but at a grave cost to those people's lives and their families.
I would disagree with that. At a fundamental level as well as at a practical level, I don't believe it's an example where regulation would help. What the experts have said is stupid is as stupid does. I believe that is true. There were plenty of people who knew that there were problems with that submersible, and I don't want to get into technical details because a lot has yet to be revealed about the situation. But I frankly don't see a reason why you would not believe that greater information would not come out and that markets would not correct this situation. I think that it's very likely that we will be going in the right direction.
Well, people had to die to give us that information, right? Like the submersible community was being badgered by experts in the industry who were basically saying, look, you're not up to our standards and there's going to be a disaster here. And in fact, the CEO fired somebody who he hired, brought on for safety reasons. The guy released a report and was like, listen, man, this thing is not safe to go below 1,000 meters. And of course, the Titanic's 4,000 meters down. And he fired the person on the spot as soon as he released the report. So if
you guys want to comment on anything, just start talking. I'll pause it right away so we can react live time.
Sure. So that's a good point. That's a good point to stop. I
guess so.
I don't know what he mean that regulation that wouldn't help. I mean, from my understanding of the Titanic, it's pretty evident that they knew they shouldn't have gone down there. And based on the technology, based on, like he's just saying, his facts were saying that they had a report saying it was unsafe. And I believe that if it was regulated, that it would have prevented him from going down. And I'm not sure,
or at least they would take different precautions to go down there. Much safer.
I don't know. Yeah, I was a little confused how you used a free market analysis to say that if we had a free market, that
that's his analysis of everything, though.
Yeah, if we had a free market, that this issue wouldn't have happened. I think one doesn't go without the other. One is an economic policy, another is a safety policy. So it's kind of confusing the issue, and that's what my assessment so far. Amanda?
Well, two thoughts on this. One, we know the saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should. In this case, they were being told not only can you not, you should not. But my other thought is, okay, we're talking about people who have more money than
entire countries.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
They're not, of course, they're being told no, but they still did it anyway. And that's sort of that really represents what is wrong with so many different parts of the world where we have all of this. We have all of this accumulated wealth that's being kept in, as so many people. The horrors I've seen, especially in the last 3 years. If they've not taken, I don't want to say that. If more of this accumulated wealth had been redistributed somewhere else, how many lives could we have saved? We could have stopped this pandemic a long time ago. We chose not to. They chose not to do anything. It makes me sick. I'm tired of counting dead friends. And a lot of it is because they couldn't afford to stay alive. And that, so when we're talking about, well, they went down in a tin can, wow. Just wow.
Yeah. Seth, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think the most applicable thing is what you said, is like he's just using free market lens to like see everything, every single issue, and somewhere like it's pretty obvious that small things could help, but like you're so like dogmatic and principled about like the government, if any sort of authority figure intervenes in any sort of way to prevent death, like it's against my principles, even if like there's bad consequences. So they don't really care about the consequences. I'm a consequentialist. I think the consequences of the actions are a lot more important than like the values you take and the means you take necessarily. Like if you have great intentions and people end up dying, like you obviously missed something. So I think we'll get a lot better picture of what the kind of things he views. Let's start that back up again. That was only like 2 minutes, so
yeah.
Since I get it that libertarians are skeptical of regulation from the government on industry, but don't like the specifics matter? Aren't there some regulations which are just obviously rational, and then others that are not? And the ones that are not good, we get rid of, but the ones that we need, it makes sense to keep.
Or you're conflating the word regulation with government. I think that may be where you and I part ways. Yes, an outside force, an outside view, an outside source of information, a third party, whether that comes from an insurance company or outside experts, can be enormously influential and enormously helpful. We have plenty of examples down through the generations of organizations that get together, either pooled in an industry or through their requirements to have insurance involved, and have flaws brought to light, problems brought to light that don't require the government to do so. This is an enormous tragedy. There's no question about that. I don't think there's a counter argument.
He's talking about there's a government here, that regulation is not connected with government. That's a flawed argument. When you really think about regulation, you have to understand that all regulations all come from industry. Government obviously are not experts in the industries that they're in. They come from groups of people coming together in that industry and recommending a set of guidelines for the government to enact as law so that the industry is safe. So his whole issue of that regulation, it's not government, it's a flawed argument. So that's going to be
it's not all top down. Like there's a lot of consensus and like a democratic decision making process that has to happen before we make any sort of regulation, and it's really more for like the people who would not otherwise follow through with something logical. You know what I mean? That people would cut corners that would cause problems. Like these are the people that need regulations.
But here's the thing: regulation. If we use that same logic, then when Teddy Roosevelt created the platform that regulates businesses, because businesses were regulating themselves, what they were doing in that regulation of themselves is their price gouging.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening is the consumers ended up paying a lot more money because the government wasn't involved.
Yeah.
And Teddy Roosevelt's biggest, and kind of made him more Democrat than Republican, biggest issue was to break up the actual antitrust that these companies were actually doing. And that was the whole reason why we got the reforms that we did in the antitrust laws. And so this whole logic that he's peddling is essentially flawed, because if we allow companies and industries to regulate themselves without government supervision, then you get price gouging, regulation, and
or collusion, and where
Yeah, well, and I think we need to remember that regulation isn't so much about making sure they stay small. It's about equity, making sure that the masses who don't have a voice, who aren't at the table, that they have that they're being protected too. We think about like the Jungle, Lupton Sinclair, like all of that whole movement of, hey, we need to watch out for every single person. Not it's not so much about reining them in, and it's sort of like I guess it's sort of a law of nature. When things get too big, they tend to collapse. Yeah, it has very real consequences for people who never have a voice. And I think it's really incumbent on anyone who does have a seat at the table to make sure that we're watching out for those people as well. I'm sitting here watching storms out here, thinking of the billowing clouds, like they get up to 40, 50,000 feet. But we had a storm that moved through last week. It was big and scary looking, but it moved so quickly that it dissipated before it did anything. And it's just sort of a metaphor for, I don't know, when these big things fail. It's not just that billionaires fail; they're going to be all right. Trust me. Unless they wind up in jail and then whatever. It's all these people who were left behind in the debris. Oh my God, it should not happen.
Yeah, and the key flaw with like right-wing libertarianism is that they are protecting a certain level of freedom, but that freedom is a freedom that's already only accessible to really powerful people. And the people, like the right to be an employer is not as important of a right to not be exploited by a powerful force that's already manipulating, controlling society privately. Like private corporations can control government, private corporations can control your private life. Like authoritarianism needs to be across the board, not just like so narrowly focused on certain regulations non-existing. Like a regulation that prevents authoritarianism would be one that advances liberty. You know what I mean? Regulation just sounds like a word that just evokes a certain amount of emotion that makes you feel like it's authoritarian, when it's really about the consequences, like I said, of the policy. Which obviously, I'm not saying we can have like a totalitarian government that just like a benevolent dictatorship, like it does have the means to change, but it's more about like weighing which is more important than the actual results of your policies. I don't want to use any sort of means possible to install my worldview, but it's not as important as the actual results.
Yeah, and I think just sort of before we move on, I think we also need to be mindful of a wolf in sheep's clothing, where we're giving you autonomy. Here's this gig job. Well, guess what? It's the gig economy is so exploitative, but our entire economy is built on the backs of gig workers who have zero protections. And I was out working 80, 90 hours a week. I still wasn't making ends meet. That has to change.
Yeah. freedom from is not always not the only problem. There's always there's always the right of freedom to. You should be free to pursue what you want to do with your life. Not if you're deserted if you're alone on a desert island, you're technically free. Like, nobody's gonna mess with your business. You run everything. Nobody's controlling any decision in your life. You have freedom to do whatever you want. But in about a week, you're probably gonna die.
No, I've actually done that.
You've been on desert island?
I did an archaeology project in Fiji
Wow.
in 2009. Yeah, a little bitty. There were some other people on this island, but
not
no
quite
electricity,
deserted,
no running. Yeah, but there was one a little bit over. I actually, now that I know what to do out there, I'd have been okay for a while. So
yeah,
would have died happy.
Well, now you're making the opposite argument I was making, but
I know. Yeah, that's okay. You're good.
Okay. All right, we'll play a little bit more, then we can pause again.
To how disappointed we are and how badly we feel for the individuals who lost their lives and the enormous tragedy that it represents for the families, as well as, less importantly, perhaps, the people that believed in this project, and the people that wanted there to be further exploration in this area to go forward. So there's plenty of disappointment to go around. I hope that no one thinks that, we're trying to, either you or I are trying to mount some sort of an argument that says, too bad, so sad, this doesn't matter. That's not at all where I think that this conversation should be going. The issue really is, should people be allowed to make decisions for themselves? And should the government have not only the authority to say, here's what's going on, here's the information you need, but to shut down by force, to shut down individuals' rights to pursue something that is enormously risky. This is not, making sure that something you plug into the wall every day works well, right? This is a very unusual circumstance. Of all the things that we regulate in the world, I'm not sure why we're picking this.
Well, because a bunch of people just died. That's why.
It's a clear example.
It's a clear example. Like, here, let me ask you this. I'll give you another example. Like, what is authoritarian versus what is just a basic regulation? So, like, seatbelts, for example, are they authoritarian, or is it just a basic regulation where, people should be required by law to wear their seatbelt?
Oh, well, it's definitionally authoritarian. What you and I are talking about is whether or not that's a good idea. I don't think there's a counter argument that says it's not authoritarian. What we're saying is the government has assumed to itself the authority to make decisions for you, whether you think they're good or bad. I personally think it's a good idea to wear a seatbelt, but there are other people who don't, I suppose. But the government assumes to itself the authority to make that decision for you. So it's definitionally authoritarian. What we're just discussing is to be seen.
Yeah, I was about to pause too.
Wait,
I think it makes a little bit of sense to say like an adult should be able to wear a seatbelt or should not have to, but like there should obviously be laws about whether or not you put a child in a seatbelt, because that's you making the decision for somebody else, or putting them at risk when they don't have a certain amount of agency. A child should obviously be forced to be in a seatbelt in a car. That's something he's sort of moving right past. What were you going to say?
My issue with the statement is just it doesn't make sense. Then why are you running for president?
Yeah, it is kind of funny because libertarians, anarchists like justice are be like, don't mess with electoral politics because it's not an avenue for change, and government this and that can't really. But libertarians are trying to like seize the state to abolish the state. It's kind of goofy.
Yeah, because logically, in his logic, he's saying that he doesn't believe in authoritarian government, but he's running for a highest office that requires an authoritarian mindset and framework to enact laws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a contradiction that you run for the highest office in the land and believe in its principles.
And he's also a former police officer, which is literally.
Wait.
Yeah, he's literally he's a former police officer, and they're literally like the most clear form of like government that exists. They're like the arm of the state. They have the monopoly on violence. They enact laws. It's kind of a very clear-cut form of authoritarianism. If you're this kind of libertarian, like it's kind of hypocritical to
kind of is,
enforce the state's laws when opposing state laws. You know.
Yeah, exactly. You gonna say, Amanda?
No, I just no, I'm sort of absorbing all of this. They're really focused in on this tin can under the sea thing when aren't there other issues? Like I could see better focuses or better foci than several rogue billionaires under the sea.
Allergies.
Oh no. We've got cats. Oh my gosh, all I can think is lawyer cat now. I'm not a cat.
Yeah, I think they were just trying to draw like certain obvious examples to make them like you have to concede at least seatbelts, right? This and that.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna skip ahead to it says deregulation. That's a little bit more important than seatbelts.
Okay.
So we'll see what he has to say about that. Although I'm sure it'll all be in line with his line of thinking so far.
Yeah.
Result of that corruption was deregulation, right? So the corruption led to the preferred policy outcome. So forget how it got there. Do you support the deregulation of the building codes?
I support the idea that industry can put into effect a regulatory structure as effectively as the government. Would you agree that the government, having done it, did not protect the people in Turkey?
Well, the only reason why it didn't protect them is because it wasn't enforced. If they enforced the building codes, then we would have been better off, no?
Were it not for a corrupt system, those people might have been more safe. I think that we can
because the building codes are good. That's the point, right?
I appreciate why you want to use the word code, but
call whatever you want. Authoritarian building codes, I'd still support it. You can call whatever you want. At the end of the day, more people building codes.
Let's stick to regulation. Do industries have an interest in coming together, forming some regulatory body of work that they agree to live by, and have some outside inspection by an insurance company, for example, in order to warrant that the work has been done to regulation, to standard,
oftentimes
in order for people to believe that it's safe? I think that's a good structure. I don't see any argument why that has to be done at the governmental level. Corruption is corruption.
Well, because the industry has one goal, and that's to make money, and predominantly to make as much money in the short term as possible. Society may have other goals, like the buildings withstanding an earthquake, or people having health insurance,
which is why we agree that some regulatory
healthcare.
Infrastructure might make sense.
Hold on a second.
So he's not opposed to regulations of business. He just doesn't think that the government should do it. That doesn't really make any sense. Like,
who's going to do it then?
Well, they think like the free market is going to form like some, but even if it was regulated privately, they're still creating rules. You know what I mean? Like, are you opposed to rules, or are you opposed to the means to create the rules? It doesn't make any sense because rules are rules.
It really doesn't. Clearly, the industry regulated. How's that working out? It's not. It is just not. It is profit.
Yeah,
there's no. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
No, go ahead. I didn't have a great point.
I was just going to say, I mean, his idea has been tried before. I mean, he's not.
Yeah, where do you think it came from?
Yeah, like the government wasn't involved in business at all.
Yeah.
For a long time in America. And what happens was price gouging happened. People were paying way too much money for their services. And when regulation came involved, prices decreased in every industry that government was able to pass some form of regulation. So this idea of, well, let's not let the government is not efficient in creating rules. Well, like I said earlier, the rules are recommended by industry.
Yeah.
No politician.
Kind of what he's saying. Yeah.
Yeah, no politician I've ever seen. Well, the ones that I know are not experts. You know, they're people who love their country and wants to.
They're rhetoricians. They're good at uniting people. They're not really like educated in every single field.
Through aspect, yeah, they give recommendations to industries. They say, hey, this is our industry. This is what we think helps, and us as politicians are supposed to be there to have a rail guard for the society place, what she was talking about. And when both of those sides intersect, then that's how we create policy. So his idea of saying, well, no regulation is necessary, it's farce, because at the end of the day, if we didn't have regulations, there would be no speed limits. There would be no guardrails on the side of the road.
Look at the manufacturing. Okay, I was going to say, look at the manufacturing of buildings before, like OSHA. You see pictures all the times of people eating their lunch on, like, look how many workplace deaths have existed in the late 1890s and the early 1900s. Like, the amount of people that died in coal mines, and these corporations are not looking out for the worker.
They will not. They will not.
They will not. It interfects, or it intervenes with their profits. You know what I mean? They're willing to take risks, to risk losing the lives of their workers if it's unlikely they're all going to die anyways. Like,
well, and guess what? They did.
Yeah, many people die, especially globally still, because of a lack of regulation. It's not like regulation inherently. It's the capitalist system which requires regulation because it's incentivizing people to cut corners because of the profit motive. Like, there's certain ways in which it could be more amenable to cooperation, and that we could reduce regulation if we didn't have this just gruesome profit motive that, like, does not care about the lives of their workers. Like, they will just hire new workers, you know?
Well, and I think just sort of to take a step back and look at the whole picture here, the concept of government, specifically this government, is citizen representation. It's not, we have all of these differing opinions, differing experiences. I don't expect Emmanuel Cleaver to be an expert in archaeology or COVID. I expect him to listen to his constituents or the people who are, and to take all of these things into consideration, and then to go vote accordingly as to what he's hearing from us.
Yeah, exactly how government works.
Yeah, it's supposed to, but we've also got Josh Hawley, and he's gonna run in all the wrong ways.
Here, I'll play so we can get a little bit more to talk about.
So that's why these things, many of them, it makes sense to be done at the governmental level, where you have the input of citizenry on societal goals that may be separate and apart from the profit motive. So, you know, I think we have many examples of industries when, like, left to their own, they cut corners, they don't take safety seriously, they do everything they can to exploit workers, or, you know, as we've seen recently, to jack up prices and price gouge using the excuse of inflation. We see the way that banks manipulated people and deceived them into getting into
issues there. Why don't we unpack those?
Well, hold on. Let me just finish. I mean, we've seen the way that banks will manipulate their customers and into, you know, taking on loans that they're going to be wildly unaffordable. There's an assumption here too from you that people are going to have perfect information and the expertise to be able to sort through all these issues that makes them vulnerable to being preyed upon by big banks or tech industry or big pharma, et cetera.
Yeah, I don't think I said any of that. I don't know where you got that, with all due respect. No, I didn't say the customers would automatically have perfect information. They'd be able to stand up to big pharma or big banks. I'm not presuming that there aren't large institutions and small institutions that would be perfectly comfortable manipulating their customers. And I'm not suggesting there isn't such a thing as corruption and fraud. All of that is absolutely true. I'm just pointing out that as much as you and I may agree, if you could let me agree with you, that a regulatory framework may be a good idea in certain situations, maybe many situations, that framework doesn't necessarily need to reside with an elected, democratically fostered institutional government. that those
but
dots
why do you
don't
think they'll
connect.
do it on their own? I don't understand that. Why do you think the industry will do it on their own? That seems totally ahistorical.
No, it's actually quite historical. Most standardization in the United States is handled in the private sector.
How is the safety of workers during, the like Dickensian era when industry had more carte blanche? They regulate themselves and make sure there weren't kids in the sweatshops and people losing limbs every day? I mean, there seems like some basic safety metrics that they're going to cut corners on as much as they possibly can. Because again, and you didn't reckon with the core of my argument, which was that the reason you don't want industry boards providing this regulatory framework is because they have one interest, which is profit maximization, and society, as represented by the government, may have other interests and likely does have other interests separate and apart from the profit motive, which is why it's appropriate for the federal government or state government to house that regulatory and enforce that regulatory framework.
Hey, y'all, do me a favor.
Well, that was a snippet from this video, and obviously there's a lot more I could pull from. Oh, we're back. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the kind of arguments we're going to hear from Mike. That was actually a more civil discussion than the other ones I've watched with him, because he's definitely a tendency to interrupt and be kind of rude sometimes. But then constantly twisted on the other person. He'll be like, "Oh, you're not being fair towards me. What do you mean?" So just expect those kind of things.
No, yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
Oh no, I really appreciated her composure through that. I like to play this game in the grocery store called Patriarchy Chicken. And gentlemen, you are beautiful, but I just started noticing that, you know how you're coming around the corner in the grocery store and there are two people, they start to converge. It just seems like there's always this expectation of some genders to that, oh, you should yield to me. And I just, no, I will not anymore. You know what? You think I'm going to stop? I'm not. We're going to crash, pal. We're going to play Patriarchy Chicken. So if someone starts talking over me, I just keep going. We're going to crash.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
He was really bad about that.
Yeah, I think men are kind of taught to have to compete with other men.
Yeah.
And they're always constantly like, I'm more masculine. My voice matters. I need to dominate this conversation. I need to dominate this and that. So they're kind of like turn off their their courtesy, and they're just like laser focused on whatever task at hand, not looking towards other people. So it's kind of like expecting entitlement, expecting people to move aside for you, which I'm very guilty of. I'm just going to be honest.
Oh, we would crash.
Yeah, we would crash. It would be fun.
Your eggs are going everywhere, dude.
No, I mean, Discord is great. And using tonality, I mean, it's all a part of argument. Your tone, how you address people, not so much the public crashing. I mean, that is inevitable because you can't see the person around the corner.
Yeah,
but
that's different.
Yeah, but you're right. It is harder when it comes to women and male perspective in debates because it becomes men. Sometimes their voice is dominating, and it's not very. It's like Trump. Trump's very loud, but he's not very logical.
Not very. That's an understatement.
Yeah, but and that is a form of arguing. I'm not gonna sit there. It's not. It's a device using arguments to raise your voice to change the tonality of the argument. But it's I love, like you said, I love her demeanor, how she was able to stick to the issues, even though he was using fallacies to attack her argument, which was essentially attacking her instead of attacking the argument itself.
Yeah, it wasn't really representative of someone I would trust to represent me.
He's trying to represent the country.
Let's stop.
There's definitely certain issues which like he could be certainly correct about, and we didn't really delve into that. But on economics, there's probably zero issues. I would agree with that.
economically.
Yeah, like he's definitely like anti-war. He's hesitant towards authoritarianism. Blah 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 blah. Like there's a lot of issues. You probably agree with me on drug decriminalization. Like there's a lot of stuff which we would agree on, at least in comparison to a Republican. But in economics, it's kind of like it's so deontological. Their view of like being opposed to taxation or like any form of government, which I'm opposed to the idea of government, but like government exists and is going to continue to exist whether you like it or not. So it's like, how would you like the government to operate? Well, I'd prefer it to be more beneficial and benevolent towards people.
Yeah, I don't even think Republicans make that argument. That's what makes libertarians very unique, and their former argument, because we Republicans would admit that some government is necessary. Like no one can argue that government is not necessary. I mean, you just wake up in the morning and look at your trash being picked up. That's government. Right. So that's the very fundamental of government, but it is government. And so
it just makes it a little bit easier in certain ways. Like theoretically, we could have a private garbage man. That's fine. It's just more efficient to do it this way. Yeah. But there's something you can't replace is like there are other states. There are other governments around the world, whether or not we like it or not. Mm-hmm. And if we get rid of our governments, they are going to take over us. Yeah. So our military, which I don't approve of the way our military operates, but the existence of a military to defend the state from other states is an absolute necessity.
I don't think necessarily our military operates incorrectly. I think they're operating under mandate of their leaders. You know?
Yeah, I mean, which is the leaders are operating incorrectly.
Yeah. We definitely have a military industrial complex. Yeah, I think that's America's biggest strength and biggest weakness at the same time. It makes us strong because no one challenges us, but it makes us weak because we don't use the resources correctly.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, we overspend, and we should be using those resources and diverting them to economic principles, education, COVID vaccines, health awareness, a whole bunch of social programs that can use the amount of money we spend in the military. It's just inefficiency of how, especially now in this modern military, you hear me talk about it too, Seth, where I think that the war of the next 50, 100 years is not going to be on a battlefield.
No.
It's going to be on a computer. Yeah. And our military is not even ready for that kind of war.
No. We're falling way behind China for sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, Amanda.
Oh, no, we just, I don't know if both of my brothers are military as well, Army and Air Force. My dad was Navy during Vietnam, although he spoke fluent Spanish, so they sent him to Spain. But I want to take a step back. When we think about government and we like our roads and our trash, and I obviously I am very much for equity. But the problem with humans is that no matter how equitable we try to get, I always think back to the example of Cambodia, Pol Pot. And this is where it gets ugly. Human nature, there's always going to be one person in the crowd. We're all equal now, except me, I'm better than you. So you have a country of 8 million people, and only 75% of them made it out of it because one person was like, you know what, we're all equal except me. I'm great. Yeah. We have to be mindful of that as well. And that's why, as much as I disagree with as much as I disagree with the powers of money and wealth, we do need to make sure that we're kind of pulled away from too much. I don't know. I don't want to say too much. There's no such thing as too much equity, but there's always going to be one person. We need to make sure that we have diversity so that it's not just one person or one small group of people getting away with dragging us out of focus.
Yeah, I think Seth said that too. I mean, you guys don't know this, but Seth and my wife used to get in these debates about Cuba.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah.
So she's Cuban, and Cubans are very hardliners when it comes to communists and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so Seth would go in these debates, and my wife would be like, socialism is not really good because what ended up happening is dictators rise from it. And that's kind of where Amanda's point is. It's like there's always going to be one person that tries to lead a socialist movement. And Seth will always say, well, that's not true socialism. That's a dictatorship. And what ended up happening is that it's really hard for society to have a true socialist policy because there's always going to be a need of government, and that government's always going to need a head to lead it. And so that's where we kind of, I guess my position is I believe in social programs, that allows us for the equality that Amanda was talking about versus trying to have social governance. Because social governance is almost, you're saying, it's always going to turn up into a dictatorship. A social program.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, for the most.
The problem is that we have a global capitalist economy, and to have a completely different functioning economy, you would have to change the way that we are currently. And change has to come in either a natural way, or you have to, if you want to do it so dramatically because you think it's important, people tend to do it in a more authoritarian way. So to dramatically alter the means of production and the ownership, people will take the short route sometimes, and that's what leads to authoritarianism. But in reality, like, socialism is the fulfillment of democracy, and everybody has democracy over their workplace, over their private life, over their personal life. They have democracy in government, and there's a lot of people that have vested interests and control over the means of production as it is. So it's like you have to balance. Like, are we going to take away their property so that we all have more freedom, or are we going to? It's all about the means. Like I was saying, like a socialist society would be a very much freer society, but how do we get there?
Well,
and that's people cut.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I don't know. I've worked with many nonprofits over the years, and one thing that I've noticed that's common among nonprofits, they're really good people who want to do really good things, and they are terrible with money. So we need the people who are good with money to come in and, okay, this is how we're going to plan this out. I worked at the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra in the box office in 2004, or when was that? 2000. Yeah, it was 2004 through 2006. The symphony went on strike. So, but they were in dire straits. They were really dire straits. So the SLSO brought in Randy Adams. He was a retired banker. He came out of retirement to come, hey, previously they had run down their endowment fund. They went on tour everywhere. They had all these recordings. They were winning Grammys, but they took a lot of this funding out of the endowment fund. We almost lost the symphony in St. Louis because of that.
Wow.
Now the players, the musicians, they were right. They did need a raise. But Randy, astute banker that he was, man, he caught a lot of hell from a lot of people. But he was like, no, you cannot run down the endowment fund unless you want to lose everything. And he stuck tightly to it. He was not popular. But and in some ways he kind of reminded me a little bit of my dad, who's a hospital administrator. I would sit and talk with my dad for hours about all these things. And I would sit out back talking with Randy as he was out there smoking. And I hate smoking, but man, Randy needs to talk. And he really had the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he was able to pull them through it. And there was a stopgap fund that came through the last minute. The Taylor family, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, they issued a challenge. And anyhow, they made it through, and he was persona non grata with a lot of people, but it's because of him. We needed that financial astuteness that he brought to it.
Yeah. It's kind of the fear of my fear of socialism would be like, hey, let's institute all these policies that creates a more equitable distribution of money, and they do it in such a way that's so aggressive so quickly that we also want freedom so people can move in and out of the country. Every single rich person who already has all the money in society is going to take the money with them to another country. Yeah. And then we have half the size of the GDP. This is the philosophy of social democracy, where they want to keep the GDP and keep in private investments so that they can fund all these social programs and create a wealth, a more equality-centered society. And you can create a socialist light economies, one would really resemble the economy we're looking towards, without scaring away private investors and capitalists, so that you can keep the money that we can continuously cycle through. They keep investing in Denmark, and Denmark still has money. Denmark redistributes the money and gives it to the people. But if you had an economy with half the amount of GDP, then you wouldn't be able to fund any of your programs, any of your distributive functions, any sort of money to fund all the cooperatives that would exist in the society, the starting of businesses. So while we have a global capitalist society, the money is concentrated in the capitalists' bank accounts. So we need to figure out, if we want a society where everybody can have enough money to feed their families and invest and start their own companies or move to a different state, whatever they want to do with their life. If we want that society, one without exploitation or without wealth concentration, we need to slowly create a more equitable society, more income equality, more social progress. And then you can move to a society where people can function independently. Because right now we have to rely on these millionaires and billionaires and their money. We need their money. We don't need the rich people. We need their money, because they have all the money and we need the money to function in society. So we need to figure out a way to create new incentives for people to build their own wealth, independent of these oligarchs, essentially. That way that we don't need to worry about them running away and our society falling apart. So that's the democratic socialist ideology, is like, let's build outside of this current capitalist framework.
I agree with you, Seth, and I think that's what the founding fathers had in mind when they said, "In the pursuit of happiness." And I think that as society goes, we determine what's happiness to society. We're moving in a direction where the inequalities have never been so great ever in American history. And so I think we are starting to realize that, and that's why now we're starting to create new policies, and to make it more equal. We do have a Democratic Senate, we have a Democratic president, and we almost had a Democratic House. We're very close. And so we are very, very aware of, I think, in America, the inequalities, and that's why I think the Republicans are having a hard time this cycle, is because they're not really talking about those inequalities.
It's become so stark that this is why right-wing populism has grown instead of like a laissez-faire capitalist, Republican Party, because even the working class Republicans can see it's not working for them, and capitalism is flawed. They just change how we want it to function, but like even they are starting to change their messaging. Like, my ideology is like, we are going to have a capital. It's actually classical economists who envisioned that a free market society, a truly free market society, not one full of exploitation stuff, would move towards workplace capitalism. Is people would have more freedom, and it would continually be getting better with more evenly, everybody succeeding. You can't have a society. It's not a free society if some people are suffering and not free, but others are free. That's not a free society. That's a privileged society. You're either born with the privilege of freedom, or you're going to work till you die. And we need a society where everyone is guaranteed a minimum standard of freedom, and they have the freedom to pursue their own path, to create whatever kind of life they want to live. They can create their own freedom. We don't want to give everybody like complete actualization just on birth. You still need to have some merit. You need to build something from the ground up. But you have to have resources to get to that place. You have to have opportunity, and that's something that capitalism doesn't inherently provide. So we need to towards freedom, not just preserve capitalism.
Yeah, we can talk about bootstraps all day long. Do you have boots? You need boots, dude.
Bootstraps I'll interrupt real quick. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps is an ironic term that Republicans use unironically, because you can't pull yourself up by the bootstraps because your feet are on the ground. So were you going to lift your shoes, both your shoes up off the ground, and you're levitating in the air? No, you can't. You literally cannot pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It's an ironic term, and they still
unless you're in Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah, I guess it's possible, but
Right.
Yep.
Oh, I wonder how differently we would see all of this if instead of saying freedom, we use the word health. If we want a healthy society, and I don't mean just physical health, but just health. If you want a healthy business, you want your employees to be healthy. You want every bit of this process to be as healthy as possible. And how do you make sure it's healthy? You make sure everybody has what they need to continue to thrive.
Yeah. It's the perfect balance of freedom alongside security, because you can have a free society without it being insecure. But I would argue you're a lot freer if your freedom is secured by something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's guaranteed and there's not a lot of risk of you losing that freedom, like that's a different kind of freedom. That's a sustainable, healthy freedom where you can balance the things that we need in society to get the result that we need, not just like deontological non-interventionism in any sort of way, because it just leads to exploitation. It leads to the laissez-faire strategy is the one that leads most directly to authoritarianism, because if somebody's trying to take power, you're just going to be like, sorry, I can't intervene. It would be forceful for me to intervene in this guy seizing power and control over society. No, you need a certain amount of pushback, a certain amount of resistance in order to ensure the protection of equal distribution of freedom. So,
I mean, that's a great conversation, guys, and I think that's something we're going to continue to talk about.
Oh, next week will be fun.
Yeah, next week will be fun. And
I can't believe the 20th. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What it is with everything after July 4th? No, it's now November.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what happens. It's true.
Like this.
I'm gonna.
It might as well be May for me. Like it feels like May at least. We just sort of skipped right ahead.
We certainly did. Guys, I'm going to give you guys their final words. But before I do that, I want to say, I'd be amiss if I didn't mention this. This week was for me one of the things, a reflection point. I saw that there was a lot of Haitians, and if people didn't know, it's a big secret. I'm from Haitian ancestries.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I really didn't know that.
Yeah, it's the whole Philippe thing.
Both parents are immigrants, right?
Yeah, and there was a lot of protests going on. I think it's called Swafpu Haiti, I think, or
Cité Haitienne.
yes. Yeah. So that is it's a movement right now they're doing in Haiti where it talks about the persecution of the Haitian government and the Haitian people and the struggles that they're going through. I'd be amiss to not use this platform to show people, especially people who follow us, that as we as America continue to pursue our pursuit of happiness, there are people who are far, far behind in the ideology of that. And it's up to us as Americans to be in the light of democracy, to continue to try to help countries establish their form of democracy so that the people can move forward and prosper. This is something that we're doing in Ukraine right now, where we need to be implementing this whole policy in Haiti. And I think that if we guys have a platform or a voice, we should continue to spread the message and help the Haitian people. And that not only the Haitian people, but I also want to mention the Cuban people. The Cuban people 2 years ago this week also was protesting and rallying in Cuba, and that hasn't been on the news for the last 2 years. That's gone quiet, and we have to make sure that we have this platform and this voice to talk about these issues, because once again, we are the leaders of democracy. The idealism that we establish is the idealism that the world should follow, in my opinion. And I think that places like Cuba, who are starving for democracy, and places like Haiti, who are starving for democracy, we have to make sure that we continue to hold our politicians' feet to the fire and show them, like, hey, even in our backyard, our we don't have democracy. It's not evident. It's not out there. So that was my 2 cents for today. If you guys know politicians, write them, call them, let them know that there's 2 countries that are looking for democracy, looking for freedom, and we as America need to help lead that fight. But with that being said, I'll let Amanda and Seth, which one's going to go first for your final statements? I'll give it to Seth. I'll give it to Amanda.
Everybody go crash.
Yeah. I'm giving it to Amanda because I'm typing something real quick.
Yeah, Amanda, go ahead.
I think I'm so glad you brought that up. As an anthropologist, one of my favorite humans, and really the only celebrity that I've ever been like, that I would ever fawn over. Oh my God, Anthony Bourdain.
Yes.
I got to call into NPR's All Things or not Talk of the Nation when that was still on. I got to talk with him, and it was like, oh my God. And I asked. Yeah. There's a transcript. I'll send it to you later.
Oh.
But I asked him, and I could at the last minute, it's live broadcast. Do you have any reservations about when you go into these countries? Like, you go to Laos. Everybody sees it on TV, and then they're like, "Oh, I want to go to Laos." Next thing you know, they're like 19 Starbucks all over. And he gave a very thoughtful answer. And I was shocked. The next episode that they filmed was in Haiti right after the earthquake. And it was this beautiful 45-minute answer to the same question where they went in. They were like, "Oh, we want to do the right thing." And they tried to do the right thing or what they thought was the right thing. And it ended up being even worse.
Yeah.
So when we want to do the right thing in these other cultures, we want to go and help Haiti or help Ukraine. We need to make sure that they are we're just empowering them. They're leading it, but we're going to empower them.
Yeah.
And it's just a form of colonialism that we need to rethink. Like, whoa, we need to make sure that this is what they want. They decide. We hand them whatever supplies and tools they need, but let them take the lead.
Yeah.
All right. With that, I guess we'll close this episode off. We've gone 12 minutes over our time, but I think it was worth it. We got a lot of stuff covered. We actually did spend most of the episode reviewing that video, so I think it worked out perfectly well. I always love having Amanda on. She's she's the first female that we've had on our show because we have way too many men guests. It's always good to have a diversified perspective, and you always actually blow me away. Like you've got so much insight. So
yes,
she's such quick wit thinking.
Oh, I do tell me knock knock joke too.
I believe it. But we're gonna have to close out soon. We're gonna have Mike Termott on next week, and it will be a very active, lively discussion. I'm very interested to see how that turns out. Hopefully everybody tunes in because I will be promoting the hell out of it and making tons of clips and stuff because it's obviously the biggest guest we've had so far. And I think a couple weeks after that, maybe we'll be having Alan Ellison on.
Oh, I love Alan.
Alan Ellison's another very big guest we've got. So hopefully this thing's going to keep going, getting bigger, and we're going to have a lot of interesting guests on in the future. So we'll definitely have Amanda on in a few weeks, I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sure she'll be a regular.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Gladly.
Exactly. I don't know what else to say. Everybody have a great week.
Thanks, Seth.
And I'll see you online, Amanda. I'm terminally online as well. So
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
This is all I do.
Yeah.
It's not all I do.
Yeah, it's pretty much all I do. I bartend and I tweet.
I tweet and I know things.
Yeah, exactly. I debate 15-year-olds on economics all day long.
Yeah.
All righty. Well,
thanks,
everybody have a great week. I'll see you guys. TTYL. Another week of Imagine.